Okay.
There. Well, hello.
Hello.
To start off with, would you like to say your name and where you are?
My name is Jelena Djoric, and I am in Sydney at the moment in Australia.
Okay. And the first question that I have for you is, who are you? Who are you as a person, as a human being? And you can speak to your qualities, your passions, your interests, your values, whatever you'd like.
Who am I? That's an interesting question to ask. I'm a mother. I'm a wife, a daughter, a student, a psychologist, psychotherapist, a friend. I'm an immigrant as well. That's an important part. Yeah, I think that's pretty much kind of roles that I have.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess you're taking on these roles or you becoming this kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of a particular event or a circumstance in life that you feel has really defined or shaped who you are?
There are a couple of events, but I would say that who am I today was shaped by my training in Gestalt therapy. I started my training after my studies in psychology. So I finished psychology in 2003 in Niš in Serbia, because I'm originally from Serbia. So I immigrated to Australia 4 years ago in 2016. So all my life and kind of growing up and education was in Yugoslavia, and then when we had kind of a war, etc., in Serbia. And I started my Gestalt training in 2003, so 17 years ago. So I would say that probably that event continuously shaped who am I today, because it's a long kind of period of dedication to to psychotherapy, and particularly Gestalt therapy. And during that training, I got married, I had my kids. So, like the whole my life and all the roles that I started with, because I started with the role, obviously, family roles, because family is my priority in terms of I of course I work and everything, but I think when I'm thinking about my roles, I'm thinking about me being a mother, me being like a part of my family. So all these things happen while I was in training. So I would say that probably the kind of the most important event that shaped my life and moving through all those roles in my life happened during the Gestalt training, which is definitely the main event, I would say, that shaped me.
Okay, and could you say a little bit about how that Gestalt training shaped you?
I mean, I studied psychology, and it's I think everywhere the training is similar. It's like I'm studying clinical psychology here again in Australia now, because it's not recognized from European qualifications. So it's the same. Psychological training, I think it didn't change. It's even more kind of CBT oriented, if you want. That's what the mainstream therapy is. So when I finished psychology at that time, there was a lot of statistics and a lot of that cognitive behavioral stuff, and I didn't find myself in that, in terms of like, this is what I really want to do in my life with my clients, and philosophy behind that. So I think I started I actually started Gestalt therapy in a very interesting way. I started it in Novi Sad, which is a city like approximately like 80 to 100 kilometers from Belgrade. And I started it there because I started my master in psychotherapy, which was a generic one. And I wanted to do some Gestalt therapy. I wanted to do some psychotherapy training, obviously out of university, because in my country of origin, psychotherapy trainings are um, not at university. So you can only do a training in a private institutes. So I started it in Novi Sad at that time, just because my friend was like doing it. So I was thinking, what trainings are available? You know, I accidentally finished in Gestalt. It's not a kind of intentional kind of thing I want to do Gestalt. It's just like, I was thinking, I don't want CBT. This is not my, cup of tea. It's not something that I like. Maybe maybe psychodynamic, like all those kind of stuff. They were not available. I didn't heard about them at that time. So my friend was doing Gestalt and she said, you need to come to this. And I said, okay, I can try. And I remember the first meeting was in the object of a childcare. Like that was they rent some space, but that was a childcare, space.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting because we had a residential there, like a couple of days intensive that I started with. So I started with intensives in a childcare center.
Mm-hmm.
With all
so
toys,
like little tiny chairs and
yes. Okay. It was really interesting. I remember that. So there were 5, 6 of us. Actually, there was 7 or 8 of us in the group. And yeah, that was my first with Gestalt therapy in a childcare center with the small chairs and toys, and we were practicing. We were having experiments, and my training was very experiential, which I think is pretty much what everyone did. I mean, we read the book afterwards and everything, but it was a very experiential thing. So yeah, that's how I started my training. It's very, when I'm thinking about it, it's really interesting, but it also having a lot of meaning, because we start our life with our parents. I was actually in love in attachment theory. That was something that I really liked during my psychology studies, and I did my graduation thesis for attachment theory, and later on I finished master and PhD again with attachment. So attachment is something that I believe is the most useful thing from psychology studies that I did, to be frankly honest, apart from other stuff that we did. And then starting my Gestalt training in a childcare center, you are going back in a way, to that period of childhood, which is really important, So it's interesting actually when I'm thinking about how I started my training. This was my first contact. Of course, we had other spaces, but for that retreat, that was a space, and it was amazing, So, and my life was shaped through Gestalt because that was a question, how Gestalt actually shaped my life through this. Later on, I got married and had kids, and I continued my training. So I was traveling actually because I relocated to Belgrade, but I wanted to be with my group. So I didn't, even though in Belgrade we had a lot of groups in Gestalt, I didn't want to leave my childcare center group, my Novi Sad group. So that's right. So I continued with them, and I was traveling, every one, regularly to those groups. And of course, we had some bigger kind of groups and lectures and theoretical components in Belgrade, and supervision and individual therapy in Belgrade. But I continued to travel to Novi Sad and finished with my group. And yeah, all the things that happen during that time, and a lot of things happen, obviously. I worked through them in my own group. And then I think the main event that happened during my Gestalt training that shaped me as a person and as a Gestalt therapist was entering European Association for Gestalt Therapy in 2009. So I graduated in Gestalt Studio Belgrade in 2008. Did my exam as a therapist, and then applied to EAGT, and there was a vacancy then for, and I didn't know anyone, you know, like my training was in Serbia with Lydia Pacetic, and there were people who were coming on and to Malta Institute, but not in Belgrade. Some of them came in Belgrade later on as well. So we had an opportunity to see some of the Gestalt therapists from Europe. But I didn't pretty much anyone. And there was a vacancy on EAGT webpage when I applied for my membership for National Organization Gestalt Therapy Officer, external PR, something like that. And I remember I said to my husband, look, this looked really interesting. You know, I would like to meet people from Europe because, you know, we are in like Serbia is not in European Union. You're in a third world country. You cannot travel. There were 3 wars. So, you know, the limited possibility to actually meet people in a way. And I said to him, look, that's really interesting. What do you think for me to apply? And I said, and he said, why not? And I said, but I don't know anyone there. No one knows about me. I don't know about them. So like, but I will apply. And I spoke with Lydia and I said to her, what do you think about this? She said, just apply. I said, well, I don't know anyone, but I will apply. So I did apply. And I remember in Berlin, there was a meeting in 2010 where you need to go and present yourself, you know who you are because you apply for a role in the, and that was the executive role. I mean, how crazy I was. So I was younger, you know, so probably. So, and I couldn't travel because my daughter got sick. So I didn't go to Berlin. And there were other people applying for the position, and they, of course, they went there. And that was the AGM, you know, like voting for positions. And I said to my husband, nothing about this, you know, I couldn't travel, so I just apply, like, you know. And he said, but never mind, I mean, you're a good candidate, they might vote you. And I said, but I'm not there, which actually happened, you know. So I wasn't there because I was not able to travel. And then I remember Peter Schultman sent me an email because he was a president of VSGT at that time. After the meeting and everything, he sent me an email that I was voted to be part of the executive committee of VSGT. I said, this is crazy. I mean, so, but that kind of part actually really shaped me a lot as a person, as a Gestalt therapist. When I actually I remember I went to Amsterdam and I was terrified. I didn't knew anyone. And we had a meeting, and this is where I meet Peter, and I meet a lot of people from European Gestalt. I met Gianni, I met Nurit and friends. Marga, you know, there were people that actually I stay with them for 10 years now. I know them, like, these are amazing meetings and friendships and professional contacts. And so, you know, 2010, I think when I went to Amsterdam, I was terrified. I remember that first meeting. I mean, they were all knew each other, you know. I was like, oh my God. And I was the youngest one, you know. Those are people who are kind of like older than you are. They are more, they are known, they are exposed. So what I'm doing here, like, it's just.
Like first day at a new school. Like it sounds.
Yeah, exactly. So I was terrified. I didn't know what to say, what to do, what my role is, what they're expecting from me. Like, it was, but actually it was really nice. You know, afterwards we had all those meetings from 2010 until 2016 when I moved here. So I met amazing people in Europe actually through EAGT and, you know, all these meetings and conferences. So actually EAGT shaped a lot my, my life and professionally and, you know, personally as well. So yeah, that's the main kind of thing. What I'm thinking, you know, you said, what is the main event? Probably, you know, I said, when I enter my training in Gestalt therapy, but also that particular connection with the AGT as the organization and entering there and meeting all those fascinating people that I learn from, you know, and learn with as well. So yeah, that's how Gestalt therapy shaped me as a person, as a professional as well.
I'm curious how you would describe that part of you that made that application and then, you know, later flew to Amsterdam. And what is that part of you? What is it? How would you describe it? What's it called?
Part of me, a crazy part of me, probably. I don't know. You know, now when I'm thinking about now, you know, when you think back, I'm thinking you must be so crazy to do that, you know, because.
Well, I'm asking you what that part is called because I identify with it and I don't know what it's called. But I was like, you're not crazy. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think it's it's probably, you know, adventurous part of me and curious part of me, part of me that likes to play and have fun and meet new places, and probably adventurous part of me because, you know, I moved a lot. Like, this is not like Australia is the not the first country where we moved, but yeah, probably that part of me that likes to live life, you know. That would be probably adventurous, curious part of me. Would be some adjectives to use, I think. Apart from being crazy, I still think, you know, when I'm thinking about this now, when we are talking, I think I was pretty crazy to do that. No one will do that, you know. This is not how you get executive committee of some European, by the way, organization, you know. It's just crazy. But it turned out it was very pleasant and great experience, you know, really great experience. I still don't understand why they choose me, because they were having people on the ground. They were having people that, you know, apply because they were part of the organization, they knew them, or, you know, I was a totally someone from Belgrade. Like, Serbia is just like, you know, but it turned out very well. I remember speaking with Johnny afterwards, when you know that we had meetings, and he said actually it turned very well for the organization and for me as well. So yeah.
So another question that I do have, and it sounds like a yes, but I'm not sure. Would you say that you feel part of a Gestalt community? Like, is that a phrase that makes sense for you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What is that like for you?
It's part of who am I would say, you know. I really like the biggest part of me being part of the Gestalt community before I moved to Australia was, and it is still, EAGT. You know, I miss a lot of people from EAGT here in Australia. It's pretty isolating, you know. Also people from my institute in Belgrade. Like, this was the first, like, Gestalt Studio Belgrade is a big institute. I think Lydia did amazing thing for that region of Yugoslavia. Like, the country where I was born does not exist anymore. I was born in Yugoslavia, and now it's like there's different countries 20 years later, 30 years later. We started the war in 1991. So, you know, I was born, as I said, I was born in a country that does not exist on the geographically does not exist. For us, it's still there, for us who were born there. So Lydia did an amazing thing because she also immigrated to Malta, and she was back and forth, and then we had institute in Belgrade, and then institute in Croatia, and in Sarajevo, and in Montenegro, and Macedonia. So like all those different countries were in a way united through Gestalt therapy. So, which is amazing. So my first Gestalt community was a community from there, that region, not just Serbia, but also kind of Yugoslavia. So in a way, I actually had my country back, if you want, through Gestalt therapy, which is really an amazing feeling, and a privilege to have that through people who were training Gestalt, and they were coming from all those countries that were called once upon a time Yugoslavia. So that was the first community, like a Gestalt community, and second one was a EAGT. As I said, from 2010, when I first started to go to those meetings and be part of the organization. And then, I mean, I'm a member of IAGT as well. I don't know many people. I know some of those. When Taormina conference was held in 2016, unfortunately, I was not able to go there because I moved here in Australia. So I missed that one, even though I was a convener of the conference. And here in Australia, there is GANS, which is a Gestalt Australia, New Zealand. So I was very lucky to meet Madeline Fogarty, because Madeline was the first person that I called when I landed here in Australia in 2016. I mean, I need to be very thankful to Johnny. Johnny is really a special person in my life, because he said, you would need someone, you need some ground, you need someone to some Gestalt kind of contact. And he gave me her phone. So we met a couple of times. Now we are like very good here. And Madeline actually was the one who introduced me here to Gestalt community, which was really important. When you come here as an immigrant, you don't know anyone. It can be isolated, So I met a lot of people from GANS. I was even 2 years international co-chair in GANS, because they thought it's a good, it's a good position for me and for them, because I have all those contacts with European Association and AGT as well. So I met a lot of people here as well in Gestalt. So my Gestalt community is GANS as well. Here in Australia, there are some amazing people in Australia. It's not so big as EAGT. EAGT is really a big community. Here is really not so big organization, but yeah. So that's again. But I do feel I actually, when you ask that question, I do feel as a part of many Gestalt communities. It's not just one. There are many, and they are international. So I don't see myself as just belonging to one kind of community. There are many Gestalt communities that I'm part of.
It's interesting that becomes like an organizing factor when you go into a new place. You look for the Gestalt therapist instead of...
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Well, I have another question, and this may not be something that you want to speak about. I don't know. When you talk about finding the Gestalt community for your former country, for the former Yugoslavia, I wonder what Gestalt had that allowed it to be a space for therapists who had gone through this process of losing a country, of being at war. In how was Gestalt able to hold that to the point where your training group sort of survived the destruction of a country? How did that happen?
That's a good question. I think Gestalt therapy allowed a space to be related to your roots, to your ancestors, which is really important, to talk about things that happened. It was a civil war in my country, which was really, horrible, because, from like 4 or 5 years of war. And then there was a NATO bombing of Serbia in 1999. So a lot of things happen. Media presentation of what happened in my country was very different from what actually happened in my country. Mm-hmm. So I think people from that region could understand, could connect. There was a space where all of us are speaking the same language, even though we have 6 now, like 6 different languages. But you still have the same history, roots, ancestors, language, culture, food, music, way of laughing, way of fighting, way of loving. It's the same kind of a passion for life. And I think those groups allow spaces for people to meet again, to integrate, or make alive something that was lost, to move through trauma that was obviously there for all of us, and to live through that trauma by acknowledging it, by saying it, verbalizing it, looking into the other, crying together, feeling the pain. Because I think it's very difficult. I know that many therapists were like coming and working with the region, like working with, but if you are not from there and you didn't live it, you cannot understand it, never. Balkan is very specific historically. If if you read a history for Balkan region and Yugoslavia, it's a very peculiar history of those people who live there for centuries. So I think those Gestalt therapy groups allowed people to actually feel understood, and seen and heard, and work through trauma in a very experiential way within the community that can understand, with the therapies that can understand what happened there, because everyone suffered and everyone lost someone and everyone was in grief, and in that period. So I think it's a very specific energy and a very specific connection that allowed people in those groups, different groups in the training, to to get together again, in the pain, in love, in pain, in passion, in life, in losses, grief, everything, all those themes. So yeah, I think that's the main kind of thing, how those groups help people to move forward, or to also help other people, because there are so many Yugoslav people who are in different countries, who moved at that time as a refugee. So I have here a lot of people who moved in Australia as refugees in 19th. So I'm meeting them here as a therapist now. So it's really something that that's as I said, a part of me being a therapist. But I think that how groups allowed growth, and work in the institute itself.
Yeah, as I was hearing you, I was like, how did that work? So thank you. Yes. I'm also wondering what it is specifically that you are focused on or interested in within Gestalt now. What is your favorite part, I guess, is the simple way of asking the question. But
my favorite part in Gestalt therapy is psychopathology. And I started to think about it when I did my training in Margherita and Gianni in 2012 in Italy. So they started those international training groups in psychopathology and contemporary disturbances. And I was thinking, always like Gestalt is so beautiful as a therapy. It's so rich. But we are not, I don't know why, but as a community, we didn't do much to kind of sell it, if you want, to government, to sell it to organizations, to sell, like it's not on the list of the evidence base, if you want. This is something that I'm talking about this a lot with Madeline. Mm-hmm. And she's aware of, I mean, she's on the same page. If you speak with her, she will mention that, obviously, evidence-based therapies, evidence-based. And I'm pretty frustrated here in Australia. Gestalt is not on the list, of course. CBT is on the list, and schema therapy and acceptance commitment. And I'm thinking, well, Pearls talked about so many things years ago. What are you talking about? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I'm thinking also about Australian history and colonization of Indigenous people here. And I lived 2.5 years, I live in Darwin, which is an Indigenous part of Australia. It was an amazing experience, amazing. I couldn't land it in a better place with my children. Not in Sydney immediately. Sydney is like Belgrade, London, Paris, any other city, you know what I mean? It's beautiful, but so Northern Territory in Australia, it's an amazing part of the country. It's Indigenous Australia. And I was thinking, well, when I was reading and working with that part of and with those people, I was thinking Gestalt is so much in this, like the way the Indigenous culture, the principles they're talking about, the philosophy, the values are Gestalt, So it's just, I would like to see Gestalt on evidence-based. I'm passionate about this, like psychopathology and evidence-based in Gestalt, in terms of putting Gestalt somewhere where we deserve, definitely,
Like it's the student that has really, really high potential, but just didn't put the paperwork in on time. Like exactly. There's no real reason that we couldn't be there, but it's just paperwork. But we have to go through the paperwork now.
That's right. But that's, when I was thinking about Heather, I was thinking, well, actually, that's what, this is the part of the Gestalt culture, probably, from the beginning of how training started. And also people who are in Gestalt are always like writing things that are critical, like a critical writing, critical analysis of things. You are criticizing the system, policies. We are not a mainstream. We'll say, not making friends. Yeah, exactly. Like CT is making a lot of friends. Do not get me wrong. I'm as I said, I'm studying a clinical psychology, and I'm going to do this again and again. I'm thinking, wow. Actually, I'm thinking how to do my master thesis here and put it Gestalt and CBT together. I will do definitely something around that, CBT and Gestalt competencies in therapies or something like that. And publishing that, we need to publish, we need to write, but not just in our community. That's the problem. Because we are behaving in a way pretty autistic. We're an autistic community sometimes, amazing community, but sometimes autistic one, because you write and you write and publish within your journals, within your kind, you know what I mean? Like now people are starting to publish papers out, like in APA journals, in some other like mainstream psychology, psychotherapy journals. There are not much, but there are not much Gestalt therapy articles. So we need to write. We need to support people who are students in trainings to write and to publish. This is why research is important. As a part of the training, research in Gestalt therapy is really important. So I'm passionate about that. I didn't see that much. It was starting in Europe. Here in Australia, they don't have research as part of the training. Very experiential, as in 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever. So I think we need to have that more if we want to put Gestalt therapy, as you said, to put a paper. A good student that didn't put a paper. So I'm passionate about that, and I'm passionate about psychopathology simply because I think if we have a good diagnostic system, if we can write about psychopathology, and this is where I think Johnny made a huge contribution, and Michaela and Dan as well, Margarita with her training as well. So, having a clear system that we can talk with other professionals, we can talk with medical science, we can talk with other psychotherapists about diagnosis and how we are doing our treatment and what we are doing with our clients with different types of diagnosis, then I think this can put us on a level where we can be. There is no reason why Gestalt therapy cannot be on the evidence-based list. I don't see it. So that's I think that these are two kind of things, research and psychopathology, two things that I'm passionate and fascinated and interested in.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering. I saw we're Facebook friends, so this is where I get my information about what you're doing. I saw you have a new position that involves work with refugees or migrants.
No, I don't. I have people who are refugees as private clients, but no. I'm not working. No, that's probably someone else or someone. No, I'm not. So, I am working with, but in private practice, not with.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's very different for me as an immigrant from Canada to Mexico. But you say you also have this experience of immigrating. And I'm wondering what training, what Gestalt therapy training can do to be more supportive for non-majority students, and if you have any thoughts on that.
You mean how Gestalt therapy training can support you as being a multicultural therapist?
Being a multicultural therapist or having more cultural diversity within our training groups, because I've noticed that the training groups seem to be mostly dominant culture. Very few people from the immigrant, different stratus, diversity. It seems to be sort of like a reflection of the dominant culture where the training group is.
Yeah, but I think in Gestalt therapy, there are very multicultural groups in training. At least here there are. And I think what can contribute to that is probably authenticity, to be who you are. There is no face mask or whatever. Like, you are encouraged to be yourself. And part of yourself is your culture. Part of yourself is your background, cultural and ethnical background, your roots. So, I think Gestalt allow that to emerge and even push it, if you want, in training. So I think probably this is how, multiculturalism can be supported in Gestalt therapy groups, and probably people feel more supported to come and do Gestalt therapy than, other therapy, where all the people are from a dominant culture. Just by that kind of allow that principle of being who you are and being authentic, and emerging with every part of yourself. And that's valued. That's not something that you should be ashamed of, or provoking any kind of shame of feeling of shame. It's very different. Probably in psychology, it's huge. It's huge, kind of a thing that does not exist there. In a mainstream kind of a clinical psychology here, it's very much Anglo-Saxon thing. It's groups are, when I'm thinking about, groups are mainly from Australians, but with Australian background. Not many people who are, as we would say here, culturally and linguistically diverse background will enter it, simply because there are high standards to enter there. And, English is my second language, as with many people who came here not from a non-English background. So then it's double difficult for you to get into those programs, probably first because of the language, and second because it's more like for a white culture, if you want, you know what I mean? Like, it's not I'm not going to generalize, but at least what I'm seeing, probably Sydney is specific. It's as I said, it's metropolitan region. If you go in some other universities that are rural and regional, maybe you will see a multiculturalism. We have here some kind of like, it's not as visible as in America. I would say it's very visible, that kind of a separation or splitting, if you want, between, white and black and all the things that are happening now. And it's an extreme. We don't have that in Australia. It's much more integrated. But I think in those university programs, unless you study something that is particularly related to multiculturalism, so you can have your peers from a multicultural background, some studies here are pretty much very Anglo-Saxon, so white, or, I think Gestalt therapy training from that perspective is offering a freedom for people to be who they are. Probably that's why groups are multicultural,
Yeah, it's again, I'm looking for the words. I'm asking for you to put words to sort of ideas. Shame and trauma and difference, ability to accept difference and authenticity. So.
I think, accepting differences and acknowledging differences on our boundary of contact boundary is a cornerstone of Gestalt therapy. So we believe in that, and we are trained in that, to be who we are and to meet and then withdraw, and to meet, like a movement of the process of meeting the other and going back to ourselves. So I think that basic concept of contact boundary is integrating multiculturalism itself, So that's why I think it's probably how Gestalt is supportive of people from different background.
Yes. Okay. This is the last sort of personal question. It seems like another category, I guess, but I'm curious if you would like to say anything about how you experience yourself in your gender or as a woman, and whether Gestalt has had anything to do with that. It's really early in the morning for you for this conversation. So.
Yeah, look, I need to take some coffee for this question. It's very early in the morning to think about gender at 9 a.m.
Who are you as a woman? Who are you? Who are you?
How Gestalt therapy? I don't know. It's I feel pretty okay in my, being a woman. I think my gender is shaped a lot with my culture, and my culture of origin is Serbian culture. Being a woman in Serbian culture is very defined. I would not say that Gestalt therapy training shaped that much as my age, probably. Because I think many changes happen even before I was born in terms of how women are seen in my country of origin, like original Serbian culture. But obviously with Gestalt, you explore more what you can do, how you can do things, etc. But, I think in Balkan culture, gender is very much defined in terms of a woman is a woman and man is a man. In a family structure, man is the one who is more kind of taking care of the family. It's very collectivistic culture. So Balkan culture is a collectivistic culture. However, it changed a lot in terms of women independence, if you want,
Mhm.
like, but in a traditional kind of a Balkan family, man is the one who is taking responsibility over the finances, if you want a job or whatever. Female or women are those who are more staying with kids and home and household, etc. It's a very, like, historically.
Mhm.
However, I think with industrial revolution, that changed everywhere, not just in more Western countries as America, Australia, Canada, Western Europe. All that region of the world is very much, it's more visible, if you want, in collective. I think individualism and collectivism are really important components of to take into consideration when we are working with clients, in particular with their cultural background, to understand where they come from, when they speak about gender as well. But I think for me, I feel pretty okay and comfortable being a woman. I'm still, I am kind of shaped by Gestalt training in terms of me being independent but I still nurture my traditional cultural values in terms of knowing, in a way, who is a woman and who is a man in a family structure. I think that's important in heterosexual marriages. I'm talking about heterosexual marriages. I cannot talk about homosexual, I don't know, but I think it's important to have that kind of integration between a female and male energy, if you want, as Jung spoke about. So yeah, I think it's I'm feeling pretty fine with my gender being a woman. I didn't feel actually discrimination or something like that. If we are talking about that, I see that women in Australia are, there are some statistics happening here, and I was surprised actually with the gender issue when I came here, because in Serbia that's not a problem. We have so many other problems. We're not thinking about gender much. When you have some existential thing, you had wars, you have some basic ground level things that are of your concern. Gender is not one, for many people there. Probably for minorities it is, like a gay minority, it's a huge suffering there for recognition, and it's still very, very backwards, if you want. It's not safe sometimes. But for majority of people, gender is not they have other problems to think about. You know what I mean? Like, it's very different.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, this is one of those questions where I don't expect everyone to have like an answer, because it's not relevant in the same way to everyone's life and to their experience. So
that's right. You have a nice dog. But in Australia, I read some statistics. and it's there are some indicators that women are, I don't know, paid less, or in the executive position you have not so many women as men, and it's but these are, as I said, these are statistics that I read. So obviously gender issue is much more visible here. That's what clear to me. In Australia than in my country of origin, for example, no one spoke about gender much, like, except if you're not a minority, then you will talk about your gender, but otherwise, no.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering if you have a particular moment that stands out to you. I'm sorry, my camera's lost focus. I'll fix that in a minute.
Yeah.
As a challenge that you faced in Gestalt therapy in particular.
Challenge? I think the main challenge in Gestalt therapy, is probably to tell people that Gestalt therapy is working. It's worth of putting, it's a very useful therapy. I didn't have I cannot remember challenges in terms of within the community or, I think challenge is more uh, outside, like to communicate to other people about Gestalt therapy, than inside. Personal, that's my experience. I know some people probably experience a lot of challenges within the community. I was not lucky to have that. I mean, pretty much I had a very good contacts and communication with community that I belong. But I think main challenges when I think about now, about not personally but Gestalt, are kind of big personalities, if you want. I think that's the challenge for our approach, if you ask me. There are some big personalities in our approach, and that can be challenging for therapy as such, for our approach and modality, because we can do much more if that will change, or if those people will actually be more aware. I mean, you will imagine they're aware because, awareness is a part of our approach. But I think if we can kind of have a peaceful, sometimes I'm thinking when I'm reading things, I'm not involved personally, but when I'm reading as a, another generation, if you want, I'm much younger than many people that are currently the main figures in Gestalt therapy around the world. And I'm thinking as a younger middle young Gestalt therapist, I'm not so young. Wow, like how amazing those people are, what they might do if they get together instead of not getting together, not.
Yeah, it's like you said, the collectivist versus the individualist paradigm.
Exactly. So I think that's the main, when I'm thinking about within our community, that would be the main challenge. I think we can do so much more if, those personalities that are, by the way, amazing people, can get along better sometimes. This is me as an observer reading some discussions. I'm not entering, but reading or observing, acknowledging, I'm thinking, wow, what an energy,
If we could just channel that.
That's right. That's right. Just amazing, isn't it? But my personal challenge with Gestalt is related to others, in terms of people who are not trained as Gestalt therapists, to kind of evoke passion in them about Gestalt.
Okay, that sounds like a lovely mission.
Yes.
And I guess the final question would probably be, what comes to mind as one of your greatest memories or moments? And you can answer that either as a person or as somehow related to Gestalt, but just a particular time that you think this was a highlight, this was a peak moment.
Oh, there are so many big moments in my life with all my adventurous paths. That is difficult to pick up.
I don't imagine life is a flat line at all.
What was the main peak moment that I can remember now? Well, I mean, personally, from my personal life, when my children were born, I don't know if every woman will say that, but I do. So I think that was a big moment in my life to become a mother, as an experience. Professionally, so many moments. I think I would say EAGT Amsterdam meetings. It's not just one; it's every year we went there. And I mean, we had meetings twice a year, so another meeting was always somewhere else in Europe, but March meetings were in Amsterdam, always. So I think those moments, when we were in Amsterdam every March, were always a peak moment. So many ideas were born there, so many discussions, so many moments, so many like nice walks and dinners, and it was always a great experience to, you know, and many ideas were born there, if you want, with you know, things that all of us are writing or people wrote or they are planning to write. I think Amsterdam is a special city in that kind of way for me, in Gestalt therapy, when many nice things were born there during those. So I would not say one peak, but it's more like a city and a place and a yeah, that would be probably professionally.
Oh, okay. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add right now?
No, it was I don't know, it was a very kind of very nice conversation in terms of going back in a way, you know. It's like provoking memories and remembering things, and just yeah, I think it was really nice to meet you and talk to you about Gestalt and life. And yeah, it was nice evoking of memories. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Then I guess we will leave it here for now. And thank you so much for doing this with me.